organization. Oh, thank you, Kelly. That's okay. That was a lot of blathering. Thank you for this is going to be recorded and we will get that out there for those folks who couldn't join. So we had this idea several years ago around a certified sun-grown collective that works with growers to try to promote that the idea of a third-party certification as a foundation for being able to brand um, small growers, micro businesses, and other folks who are working with the plant in a regenerative, organic way. Um, Kelly's going to talk a little bit about the experience with Sun and Earth, which I think is really important. We're looking to, integrate cannabis production with food systems, ethics, and community in a very transparent way, which is why we're working with a certification model. And we'll get into that in a little bit. Um, so the regenerative organic farming piece and the community flourishing is another central piece of this, because if you don't have those things, you're just defaulting to the business as usual model, and we know how that's going in terms of cannabis in New York, um, and more broadly in the country. Next slide. Great. So here's why we're doing what we're doing and bootstrapping this. We're working in general in agriculture and more broadly in the culture with really extractive industrial practices. Um, and we all know that we need to be shifting away from those as part of our really important work. It's has disconnected communities. There's a lack of regional coordination and collaboration. And in a state as big as New York, that's going to be really crucial to promote what we're talking about doing here. Um, and primarily, and you guys who know me have heard me talk about this a lot, one thing that New York OCM and others have not done is really um, support and promote the bedrock of the industry, which is small growers in New York and sustainable models of production of cannabis. So if you're on that really unsustainable path, the whole piece collapses ultimately. So that is, those are some of the core issues. There are many more. Um, so what we're thinking about trying to do with this organization in collaboration with New York Small Pharma and Sun and Earth and hopefully others as we move forward is really promoting the ideas around regional agricultural and economic resilience, regenerative versus extractive models, not just in the way we're producing cannabis and food, but in business models. And we'll be getting into that in some other webinars that we do in the next couple of months. Um, we want to make sure communities are empowered with collaborative and shared knowledge. That's one of the things that we think is so important, and moving away from kind of the siloed individual business or grower to come together in a way that we can easily share knowledge and feel safe in that space. That's really important. And one of the core pieces here is to develop a supply chain based on defined best practices within the regenerative organic model. And then there's a lot of other pieces of that, but we'll talk a bit about that. Next slide. Okay, so there's 10 guiding principles of the collective. And I will say many of these things come out of the work that I did with Sun and Earth since its inception as part of the original writing team for the standard, kind of steeped in this, but these core guiding principles are also the core guiding principles of Sun and Earth. Um, Sun-grown crops. And we could get into that in a little more detail. I will just say, if you want to check out some of the more detailed language around some of these core principles, we have that on our brand new, very not slick 2-page website that we have up for certified sungrown collective.com if you want to check that out. There's a bit more detail in here. So sun-grown crops. Crops grown outdoors in soil. Um, the only caveat there is that in terms of the Sun and Earth Standard and what we're looking at, you can start plants with artificial light because we're in the Northeast. Go back there, Kelly. Back one slide. Okay. Soil health. Part of what we're going to be doing with the collective is really measuring soil health in terms of tilth, organic matter, other kinds of things. One of the ways we're going to do that is with specific kinds of techniques that if you're interested in joining, we share with you ways that we're going to track that. Biodiversity, same thing. We have specific methodologies around how to promote biodiversity on your farm. We're tracking water management, organic inputs, the hope being that most of the inputs ultimately on a farm will come from the farm itself, limiting the amount of off-farm inputs, which reduces costs for growers and ultimately the cost of production. Carbon reduction. This is one of the things that's very interesting to talk about with the public and growers. And you have to be very specific about what you mean. We have work templates for growers who are going through the certification process to track their carbon reduction. Education, it's a huge piece of this, not just the organization out there doing education and promotion with the public, but also the group of the collective doing education among the grower group. This is really important. I know growers often share things. We want to make that a much more organized kind of effort and track the work that each grower is doing and an ability to share that information. Another big piece of what we want to do and what Sun and Earth's mission has been is local engagement. So that's engagement with the local community on a bunch of different levels. Kelly will talk about that a little bit. And again, food production. We believe that the integration of food production and distribution of food to at-risk communities is or should be an integral part of what we do as growers. And that can take a number of different forms because we want to meet growers where they are. Some growers may not have the ability to do the kind of production that's required in the certification, but there are other routes to be able to contribute in that way. And that's part of the work we're going to do within our working groups in the collective. Next slide. Okay, this presentation, this webinar is basically focusing on how folks are going to get certified. I'll just say something about certification, and then Kelly's really going to take this when she describes Sun and Earth. But I believe, and this comes from a background of 15, 20 years in doing agricultural certification in a bunch of different kinds of markets. Certification via organizations and third parties lends a transparency and a legitimacy to a certification that you're not going to get in any kind of other branding. And ultimately, a certification mark is a type of brand. But we are proposing that it's going to be backed up by some very substantial data that's transparent and people can look at. So year one, what we're really hoping to do is engage with growers and others who are supportive of what we're doing to enter the process. And part of this for growers is an attestation of certain principles, mostly based on those 10 areas. Step two would be doing a self-assessment of your farm and how that aligns with what SunGrowers Collective wants to see and what ultimately Sun and Earth as a third-party certifier wants to see. And then we work with the grower to create kind of a corrective action plan to see where you are in that process. Some people are very far down the path of regenerative production. Others have things they need to work on. So we help them craft a corrective action plan. This is really important because if someone wants to see how a grower is working through this process to become regenerative, they can look at that data. If a grower wants to share that with them. So again, it comes back to kind of uh, making what you're doing real in terms of being able to show that evidence to a consumer. So year two is an on-site certification. That is a third-party certification with Sun and Earth, a final approval, and a timeline with milestones to do any kind of projects or corrective actions or other kinds of things. Largely, this is going to be crafted with the grower and the SunGrowers Collective, so that it's very clear over however whatever the time frame is that you create this farm plan and corrective action plan, that you're actually doing these things. So we work with you to track all of that. Okay, next slide. Okay, year one, attestation. And once you kind of get into the process, you'll be able to look at what that is. We give you a self-assessment matrix. So it's basically going through your operation, looking at what's required to be certified with the collective and with Sun and Earth and where you are. And then that's how you kind of create a corrective action plan. Once you do that with the collective, you're able to then use the branding of the collective for marketing your product. Okay, next slide. That's a great slide of Tina there. That is a Sun and Earth grower in California. So year two, that's where typically Sun and Earth would come in and assess these pieces. Soil care, human empowerment, community engagement. There are many other things there. That's a good condensing of the information. So what I've tried to do with our collective kind of intake form is align it with Sun and Earth so that actually a lot of the information that you're giving us is able to easily slide over into the Sun and Earth world as an initial application. And then what the third-party certifier does is do an on-site inspection, soil testing, to assure that what you say in your attestation and your farm plan and all of the paperwork that you've submitted is actually what you're doing. And then there's a final review with a reviewer who is not the person who actually does the audit on site. And then there's the certification decision. And then there's an annual renewal. Kelly could talk a little bit about that process. It's shifting a little bit with Sun and Earth. Okay, next slide. Great. I'm going to hand it over to Kelly O'Rourke, who is what is your title now? Everything? Operations. And she can describe what the Sun and Earth Certified track is.
Hi there. Yeah, I am currently, my title is Certification Coordinator at Sun and Earth. I'm Kelly. Sorry, I had to find that mute button. I'm juggling so many windows, but I've been doing this work since 2020, started doing inspections in 2021, and I've done more than 200 on-site regenerative organic inspections. I've done final reviews and initial reviews for Sun and Earth. So yeah, I'm kind of doing it all right now at Sun and Earth, aside from marketing and fundraising. Um, so yep, I'm an IOA trained organic inspector, and I got brought into this work when my small business went under during the pandemic, and agriculture was um, still needed in this area. I live in Arcata in Humboldt County. So what's around? All right, well, I'll go give this a try. And one thing led to another, and now I'm in a very niche career, which I really love and enjoy. I love working for Sun and Earth. I think that what we do is important, and I can really stand behind it. I've visited almost all of our farms, so I see what everybody is doing in this good work. And I know that there's so many farms out there that meet our standards that are not yet in the program. So that's sort of my mission right now, is just to spread the word and get people on the same train. So our standard is a regenerative organic standard. We can't use the word organic technically because of federal prohibition. So this is, but it is heavily based on the National Organic Program, including materials lists and stuff. So we have additional restrictions on top of that foundation. But essentially, the standard is broken into three pieces, which is the soil care, the earth care, the human empowerment piece, which is fair labor practices and safe labor practices on site. And then our farms have to be involved with their communities. So those are sort of the three main aspects of Sun and Earth. And it was developed collaboratively by a lot of people that were in the industry that cared a lot and wanted to see something like this go forward. Oops. Oh gosh. Here we go. Um, I will share a little bit more in detail about our standard, especially if there's questions that come up at the end. But please feel welcome to reach out to me directly, and I'll provide a full copy of the standard and you can review it. It's pretty extensive, so we won't get to go through every single standard today. That would just take way too long. But I just wanted to touch a little bit on the way that we approach certification and on-site inspections. This was a really kind of like a no man's land. There's a lot of issues within cannabis that aren't there in other types of agriculture, where organics is pretty well established, even though that took a lot of work and some time. And there are issues with trust, even just with non-cannabis growers. But to invite, someone onto your farm to look through all of your records, to go through your material shed, um, there was a period of trust building that had to happen, and a lot of education and knowledge that needed to be built within this industry, and we'll just communicate it also. So we try to be very thorough and follow best practices for organic certification, but we also understand that not every single farm is meeting every single standard at that perfect level. There's always going to be a spectrum of really great regenerative organic farms. And some people will just be meeting those baselines, and we're going to continue to move them along. And then other people are excelling at a gold star level, is what you would call it. Just some examples of kind of some of the farms that we see. We have dry farms in the bottoms in prime ag soil. We've got multi-generational homesteads that are way up in the mountains, growing in terraced hugel beds, no-till methods, Korean natural farms. And then we also have, all kinds of no-till and light-till, what I would call light-till operations, who are very, very diversified and are also producing lots and lots of food for their communities. And those are, in particular, my very favorite farms to visit. I've learned so much. So just kind of take the scary factor out of certification, you don't have to be perfect to be in this program. You have to be demonstrating there are certain hard stops where we can't certify you if you're using a prohibited substance or something like that. But if you're dialing in your IPM and your cover crop strategies, something like that that can be improved on, then that's something that will always be willing to work with you. And the standard and certification process itself is a great way to learn about your operation and your system and try to improve it. And it also connects you to a really amazing network of very, very smart, creative, hardworking farmers. And what I've seen in the program is that people are really willing to help each other out. So I hope New York will come online in a big group. Okay. So there's a lot of words on this page. Don't get too scared, but I just wanted to be quite detailed about what the certification process really looks like. Essentially, your first step in applying would be to reach out to me by email or phone and give me your email address, and I will send you an application. And this application is a PDF. You just fill it in, or you can hand fill it in and scan it and send it back. I also have done applications for people on the phone, some old timers that just did not want to deal with a computer. So I sat down on the phone and we fill out their application for them. So there are accommodations if you need help with your application. Um, so it's a pretty extensive document and it's going to be mostly kind of an open-ended question, like tell us about how you manage fertility. Tell us about how you manage pests. Tell us about how you deal with water. Tell us about your employees and how you manage labor. Tell us about how you engage in your community. So that's not like a checkbox, one right way to do it. There's so many different ways to grow and we see all of them, most of them. We see the best. And so it really gives you a chance to give as much detail as you'd like. And this document becomes your what we call an organic system plan or your farm plan. And this is a living document that will live in our database and that inspectors and reviewers will come back to again and again. Because ultimately, the goal of an on-site inspection is to confirm that what you've reported in this farm plan is actually taking place. So we're not there to, and as I come on a farm as an inspector, one of the first things I say is I'm not there to judge you. I'm literally there to go kind of step by step by your farm plan and say, is there evidence of this? Yes or no? And so sometimes that just saying that out loud helps people relax a little bit, just to know that, like, I'm here equally to learn from you and look for the ways in which you are in compliance with the spirit of the standard and the standard itself. So one important thing about this farm plan is the reported materials list. And this is where people get hung up in what we call initial review. So when you fill out your application, it's going to be really important that you report every input and material that you use, including your potting soil, including, your cloning medium, or that's not the right word, but you know what I mean by that. I didn't want to say hormone because I'm like, no, don't want to, don't use your synthetic hormones there. But we really want to see if I go through an initial review and I see that they have not listed a potting soil. My question as an initial reviewer is to say, well, how are you propagating plants then? How are you doing this work? And the answer is either I forgot to report the potting soil or I'm mixing all of my soil on farm. Um, so what will happen in this initial review process is I'll go through the application or whoever is doing the intake and we'll look pretty carefully at the information and say, is this operation likely to be certified? Um, are there any reported materials that will automatically kick you into what we would call a transitional tier or something where it would take at least a year or more to become certified because of a material that you've used on your property, which there's no shame in going through a transitional process. Lots and lots of conventional growers transition to organics. Um, and we applaud that. So the other, but what would happen is I would see, okay, well, this potting soil is missing. You'd get an email back and it would say, hey, can you confirm whether or not you're using an imported potting soil? And if so, can you please send me the brand name and manufacturer? One second, got somebody coming in the waiting room. So in order to speed this process along, you really want to make sure when you're filling out your application that you're really pretty exhaustive about the materials that you're reporting use. It's going to help you and it's going to help you get through initial review quicker. Because if we have to go back and forth a lot, that just takes time. It takes weeks. So be very thorough in that reported materials list if you're going to plan on applying. Um, once oh, we got more people. Sorry. Once, the initial review is completed on our end, we essentially will say you're likely to be certified. We are ready to assign an inspector. And then we will estimate the travel costs that you might incur because Sun and Earth is a flat fee every year. Plus, you have to cover whatever travel expenses the inspector incurs. So if you have to fly me out from Arcata to get to Vermont, it could be $1,500. That's a lot. So we try to use regional inspectors. We've got inspectors all over the place. Brian is out there for us, and we have other people that are able to travel to a lot of our regions and keep our growers' costs low. But we do like to estimate that ahead of time so that you know what to expect on your first bill. So then an inspector will contact you. So from then it goes to a point where you're dealing with an independent inspector, perhaps, or you're dealing with me as the staff inspector. And that person will reach out and say, hey, I'm coming out at this time. This is about how long it's going to take. And they're going to want to see pretty much every aspect of your certification. It can take, depending on the size of the operation, it could take 2.5, 3 hours. It could take 6, 7 hours if it's really a big place and I have to go to multiple sites. So you're going to get a lot of information right off the bat about what to expect. And they're going to also request what records they'd like to see. So you'll get a complete list before anyone steps onto your farm about what you need to have prepared. So the inspection itself is, I absolutely love being on site. It's a favorite part of my job. I get to meet such cool people. But essentially, I like to start with records, like a light record review, then do a tour, and then we confirm or go back to the records if needed. For instance, if I've gone through the records and then while we're touring the field, they mention, oh, I had to give these guys a little sulfur. And I'm like, oh, well, you know, that wasn't in the records, in your IPM records. So can you confirm when, et cetera? Those types of questions might come up. Um, Ultimately, the inspection process is, I find, to be a really friendly, relaxed. It's nothing like a regulatory inspection. I will not be checking your metric tags if you guys are doing that nonsense. You know, um, in fact, I'm not there at all to check in on your regulatory compliance, aside from confirming that you have a license, which is part of our standard. So other than that, all I'm there to do is help you prove what you say you're doing. So I'm there. I always try to remind people I'm there at your request. You're inviting me onto your farm to help you confirm something and communicate it to a consumer, a buyer, whoever that wants to know more about what you guys are doing. Once the inspection is done, one more important thing that happens at your first inspection is a soil test. So Sun and Earth does a initial pesticide residue screen on your growing medium or your native soil, depending on what you're growing in. And this panel is pretty exhaustive. I'm happy to share it. I usually share it in that first email where you'll get an application from us. I will share the complete panel so you can take a look at what they're testing for. Oh, we got somebody coming in. It's pretty exhaustive and it's very interesting to get to look at these results. So that is done by the inspector, and then you will also receive all of those results. Doesn't test for fertility, doesn't test for your NPK or anything like that, soil organic matter. It's just a pesticide residue screen. That's only done in the first year of the program. So once that's complete, your inspector has a 2-week deadline to finalize the report. And that will go to another organic professional. Like Brian mentioned, in organics, the best practice is always that someone does the on-site inspection to confirm the organic system plan and then writes a report which identifies any issues of concern that they may have about whether you are meeting a standard or not meeting a standard. So a common issue of concern might be the records are not complete enough to really confirm the application of the materials. So that would be potentially a non-compliance or a reminder. A reminder is sort of like a nicer non-compliance, like, hey, make sure you're doing this next year. We will be confirming this at your next inspection. So I just let me make sure I'm kind of in my brain where I want to be. Um, right. So in certification, what we really need to see is like this level of objectivity where the inspector is reporting based on what they've seen on site and in your records, whether or not they can confirm the farm plan and whether they've identified any issues of concern. That report goes to a final reviewer who is also an inspector, a professional who has a lot of experience, who really understands the spirit of the standard at a higher level. And that person reads the report, goes back into your files. If they have any questions, they may reach out to the inspector. They may reach out to you if there's a needed record that you said you were going to provide and you did not. Then the final reviewer might hunt you down and say, hey, you said you were going to send that rice straw receipt. Where's that at? So again, by making sure that you have everything ready for your on-site inspection, you can speed this process along. Because if there's nothing going on in final review, it just speeds right through. Final reviewer would then make a decision on whether to award certification based on whether there are non-compliances. You know, we might just, if there's everything looks great, Gold Star Farm, no non-compliances, no reminders, you'll just get a certificate with a letter, a copy of your inspection report, copy of your soil test, and it's easy. They could also suggest let's award certification after the resolution of non-compliances. So, say your records are kind of messy and you don't have them organized in a way that an inspector can review easily, then maybe the non-compliances, please state in an email how you will improve your record keeping. And then, so the resolution of the non-compliances, these are big words that sound kind of stupid and scary, but ultimately what it usually requires of you is to make a plan, to write that down and to send it to us, which we document pretty exhaustively. So you have a client file that's just full of like every email you'll send us, and confirmation of, yes, I used this. No, I didn't use this. Yes, I'm going to use this template next year. And that way, the next year, the inspector can go back and say, hey, I see you had this non-compliance and how is that going? You know, have you found a great cover crop strategy or et cetera? Okay, so there's a continuity year to year, and the process itself should help move you toward better and better practices. And just on the right hand side, this is really just to show you how much information is collected on our end and stored in a secure, controlled database. All of our files are pretty controlled. I'm pretty much the only one that has access to them, outside of the contract inspectors. And ultimately you go through all of this, and at the end of the day, you get the certificate that really shows how much hard work you've put into it. I feel like I'm getting kind of in the weeds. Let's move along. Oh, so I should have probably put this at the beginning, but our this is just a little bit about our program and how many farms we have. This is a pin map of our currently certified farms and manufacturers. We've got 70 active clients at this time. We've had lots of new farms come in, and then unfortunately here in California, we've seen a lot of attrition because of the market. So the standard itself was collaboratively developed, and Brian had a huge hand in that, as far as I understand it, right? But um, it was also developed, it was developed by people who were in cannabis. It was really developed around what they did on their farms already, with bringing in organic professionals to really see how that aligns with the national program. So, I love to see this big pocket up here in the triangle, but, New York, where are you guys at? Let's come on, because I know there's an amazing community of legacy people who have access to wonderful genetics, breeders, diversified farms, and I personally would love to see some of them. So, all right. Whoops, what's happened? Huh, is that it? Well, I'll go. Oh, I see. I was going to show you my the standard and then a copy. Let me show you a copy of the application. Give me a minute. I'm not the most Zoom savvy. I do try. I might have to stop the share and then restart it. Okay. Okay. So this is just real quickly, just scanning through. This is a copy of our standards. They were revised in 2022. Occasionally stuff will come up. For instance, we used to not allow any synthetic micronutrients, um, manganese, iron, all of these things. The National Organic Program does allow certain synthetic micronutrients. So there are products out there that are, with the OMRI stamp, say approved for use, and then we're not allowing it. So there was just a couple of little policy things that come up when you're dealing with any kind of rule or law or regulation, as you guys I'm sure know, on the ground. Um, we have to occasionally go in and update the policy. And that's also done, as an organization, there's a governing board. So okay, so this document is pretty extensive, but for those of you that are interested in the program, you should absolutely go through and read it and just give yourself a little checklist like, oh, this is something I already do. It's a lot of history of the program, sort of just an overview. And this is talking about the levels of certification, which I don't want to get too bogged down in, but essentially we have a couple of standards that are what we call gold star extras. And if you're meeting all six of them, we would call you gold level. I believe there's only two in the entire program that meet every single one of those standards. It's pretty hard to get because it involves you're propagating from seed, not using lights. So most people who are propagating are using clones. And the other one is mixing all of your potting soil on farm using on farm resources. Pretty hard to do and keep it consistent. Takes a lot of what we call gumption. And a brown level is our transitional tier, like I mentioned before. So if you've used a prohibited substance in the last 3 years, we would have to push you in this brown level, which means you get all of the support of the certification process, but you cannot use the marketing on your product. Okay, so here's the way our standard is broken down. It's broken down into, sort of the record keeping piece, your overall ecosystem management, your resources, basically your water, how much carbon you're storing in your soil. And, there are defined assessment criteria. So an inspector can come in and say, okay, well, they're storing carbon. Well, the inspector doesn't write, oh, they're storing carbon. The inspector writes, they're using windrow composting. They are a no-till farm. They are off-grid, all solar. All of these things are, information that would confirm that standard. Sun and Earth is, of course, a non-GMO standard, just like the National Organic Program. So you've got your general land history, which talks about prohibited substances. Your seeds. We use a hierarchy right now because it's going to take some time for the industry to mature to the point where we have certified seeds and planting stock. So the hierarchy goes basically from best case scenario is you are breeding and popping seeds yourself and sharing seeds with your Sun and Earth certified friends and neighbors. Worst case scenario, but still certifiable, is that you're purchasing clones from a nursery and they are coming not in Rockwool. So we want to see them in something that's not Rockwool. It's not approved for use as an input in organics. It's a synthetic, non-organic substance. So that's sort of the way we deal with that. Is like somewhere in there, we want to see you. Okay. And that may change over time as the policy or as the certification matures. So we've got the way you're caring for soil. A diversified crop is something that's really important. If the farm is not producing any food or animals, meat, dairy, anything like that, then again, worst case scenario, you're only producing cannabis, but there's diversity within your canopy. So I don't want to see the same strain, like, 50 blue dreams and that's it. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for a little bit more diversity within the genetic profile of the crop at the very least. And what's really great to see is people that are producing all kinds of food and herbs and medicines for their community or their neighbors. Okay. Soil erosion, we want to see some making sure that people are taking care of their resources, their soils, not, we want to see things covered mostly. Okay. Again, this is getting kind of into the nitty gritty in terms of the soil care. One thing that's important is we do require living soil. Um, and that means it's a tricky one, right? How do I confirm that? And that's again just a set of assessment criteria. Are they tilling? How deep are they tilling? What are they tilling with? Is there signs of life? Is there mycelium that I can see visibly with my eyes? Do I see worms? Do I see other signs of life? Those are things that an inspector is going to be looking for. So here's an important one that we should touch on is some people don't like this about the standard. They think it should all be in the ground, but because of land access issues and the history of the traditional market, especially here in California, um, not everybody could pay $4 to $5 million for a regulation ready cannabis farm on prime ag soil. I'm really happy for everybody that did, but a lot of people, their homesteads are up in the middle of nowhere and they're working at 2,500 feet, so they're not in bottom land. They need to be working with something else. And so we really wanted to be inclusive. Um, so the issue though is you can't just fill a raised bed with organic OMRI potting soil and become Sun and Earth certified that same year. That's even an expanded canopy. For instance, last year we had a couple of farms that added several raised beds because their canopy calculation changed, and we had to come up with a no, a, commingling plan, which is a little silly, but the fact is that that soil has to be managed regeneratively for at least 1 year to be able to be eligible. So that farmer had to white label that product that came off of those plants just temporarily. It's kind of a headache, but that's the way the standard's written. Um, let's see. So these here on the right are the Gold Star extras, if you're just curious. We love to see composting, of course. I see all kinds of composting strategies, some really unique ones, including involving bunnies. But um, that farm's actually no longer in the program, but very interesting. So we want to reduce the amount of non-manure soil fertility inputs manufactured off farm. That's like ultimately one of the big things that inspectors going to be looking at in your records is how much fertility did you import from off farm? Where did it come from? And how are you managing fertility on your farm, even if you are importing some materials? So are you using cover crops? Does your cover crop strategy make sense from a soil testing perspective? All of these questions are sort of in this part of the standard. One thing to know is that we do allow mineral fertilizers, but you need to have a soil test that justifies it. So that needs to be in your records. Um, again, that's just a matter of the ecological impact that mineral fertilizer farming, or not farming, but mineral fertilizer production has had. It's pretty horrific, actually. So same with the synthetic micronutrients. We do allow those, but they have to be based on a soil test. So field burning is not something that we see a lot in this industry, but we do want to see you trying to deal with crop waste and even just your forest defense things, like bury as much of it as you can. Get that carbon in the soil and not in the atmosphere is the idea. Um, Again, integrated pest management, we really just want to learn and confirm your processes. Are you releasing bugs? Are you using companion planting? Are you preventatively spraying? Hopefully not. We want to see a strategy that's really proactive. For instance, one of the things that comes up is one standard practice out here in the hills is people dip out all of their plants in sulfur in the nursery, right? So we want to see that used as a last resort. We want to see some documentation. Um, if I see those little white sulfur spots on a leaf in a nursery, I'm going to say, well, what's going on here? And that happened one time last year where I could see the sulfur on the plants, and he whipped out this really cool handy dandy pocket microscope and was able to show me a dead russet mite. And there you go. Like, okay, this is great. Next year, make sure that you've written down that you've spotted these russet mites, and what part of the garden was it in? How many were there? Where did the planting stock come from, et cetera? Where do you think this came from? And we just want to see that proactive planning around pests rather than relying on sprayed materials. Okay, I'm not going to get too deep into the processing, but you guys are welcome to get into this. Workers' rights, in terms of the fair labor, What we want to see are we want to see contracts for all of your employees, and we want to see included in this contract or in a handbook some kind of workers' rights policy that your employees are also aware of. It can't just be something that lives on your hard drive. Sometimes that does happen, but many of our farms have zero employees. I would say that's more common than not to see a farm that's family operated. And in that case, then you're not required to keep any additional documentation because it's just you. So we try to be reasonable. We want to see safe and healthy housing if you're providing it. I want to see that there's a bathroom and a hand wash. There's a snake bite kit. Whatever it is, it's not applicable to every single site, but depending on the site, we just want to make sure these standards are covered. Many of these things are not applicable on our farms. So, and this is our contract standards. Community engagement. 18.1 is we want to see a written description of your community engagement. We've done it in a couple different ways. At first, it was like just one document that everybody wrote at the beginning, and it just continued on with them. And then we began asking people to update that. So what we've transitioned to is when you are preparing for your inspection, you'll just get a link to a Google form. It's like a 5-minute form, and you are asked to checkbox what types of things you're doing, give us a paragraph, and it's a quick and easy way to satisfy this requirement without people sometimes have a total block about opening a new Word document and starting something. I've had to just really threaten people to write that document. Come on, please. It's not that hard. So this makes it a little bit easier. We do try to make it as easy as possible. Labeling, we just make sure we have a logo use policy that we're expecting people to. This is the juicy stuff here at the end, the annexes. This is where you will dive in and find out, what we allow and whether there are restrictions. So this is going to line up with the National Organic Program, but for instance, with like the mineral fertilizers, with the guanos, we want to see guano as really a minor ingredient in potting soil. We don't want to see it as a main amendment. Micronutrients need a soil test, these kinds of things. So you can see what's allowed and whether there's a restriction here on the right. Also, what's really great about being in the program is you can call me anytime and text me, bug me. Am I allowed to use this? If I'll tell you this, like sometimes it takes me a while to get back to an email about something, but if I get a text from a grower that says, help, I've got a pathogen, I need to add something to my farm plan. Am I allowed to use this? I'm totally confused. I prioritize that. I'm getting back to them within an hour and trying to help them understand what they should use, because you don't want to get into a situation where you buy something that was either labeled in a misleading way or you just get it mixed up. So that's what we are offering as a service for our certified clients. It's just like, hey, can I use this? Is this allowed? We'll add it to your farm plan and make sure that you're not getting into hot water. So I think that being said, I know this is long. This is an example of our application form. And so I'll just scan through. You can kind of see it's all open-ended. We do ask you to give us some information about how much you're growing, so we have an expectation of what kind of inspection to prepare for. And then here, one thing I just wanted to point out to you guys, in case you are interested in applying, is this little ditty right here, land history. If I get any question more than any other, it's about this segment of the application. We want you to report your land history for the last 3 years, just as you do in organics. And people are like, what do I write? Because it's like one box for an entire year. Are you going to list every single thing that, well, no. What I would say is where you list that is your grower material. So everything you've used in the last 3 years needs to be on this list, if at all possible. I know you may forget one thing or another, but we really want you to be as open and honest as you can. You're going to learn a lot. The brand name of the material and the manufacturer, these are two really important pieces because this is how we actually find out and confirm. Yeah, and Brian knows it gets real annoying when it's like, oh, it's that worm guy stuff. You're like, no, I need you to be more detailed than that. So I'm doing my due diligence. So here, what I would say is, the land use is like, okay, well, let's say in 2021, we were just in the process of getting stuff online, and the only thing it was used for is I had my neighbor graze some cattle in there. Okay, so grazing or fallow or nothing. Or you've had a traditional farm forever and you've been growing cannabis, just say cannabis, or hemp or whatever it is. Um, Diversified farm. It just short one word answers here, to give the overall picture. And then substances applied to land and crops. Um, if you've used anything conventional, report it. And we'll get you in the transitional program. And before you know it, you'll be certified in the clear. So usually what I tell people is to be very, very thorough on this grower materials list, and then include here organic approved inputs or see materials list. And this is going to help you to kind of like, because it's almost redundant to, we're not going to ask you to put 40 lines in this 2024. Instead, just use this one list and refer to it. So if you're not sure, just be honest, just do your best. And because there's always a pathway forward. I really think one of the finest farms that we have out here that is a state fair winner, gold medal winner, amazing breeder, does the most incredible Jadam ferments, and he used a prohibited CalMag and he reported it, and it popped him out of the program. He couldn't get in as quickly as he wanted to, but he wanted to go through the process. We got him through, and he's now certified. That was it was years ago that came up. And he's incredible. So, sometimes it's like, oh, the sky's falling if I can't get in right now. But just know that like time, as just moves on and on and on. And your business, it's better to start now, than waiting, is what I would say, because you're going to learn a lot just going through the process. So that was the big thing I wanted to point out about the application that can kind of snag people up. And the other thing I'll say about it is, if this is intimidating to you, I will hold your hand and help you. So you can always call me, text me, email me, and I can give you some guidance. I can't tell you exactly what to write, but I can give you, some guidance on how and what kind of information we're trying to get at here if it's not clear to you, if that makes sense. So with that being said, I think I'll turn it back to Brian. You think, was that too
Yeah,
exhaustive?
real quick, and then I'm gonna turn it over, give Nicole a bit of time here. Yeah, I just wanted to, that was great. Thank you for the detail there. One of the things that we've tried to do with the collective is to align all of our uh, intake information with Sun and Earth. So, we see our role as being able to guide growers into that process, over that transition period, and do the hand holding. Some people may be ready to jump in with Sun and Earth year one. We will know that, once you guys, come into our process and fill that out. If you feel confident after, looking at Sun and Earth, go for it. We're hoping everybody is part of all of these organizations because we're focused on, a common mission here. So one of the things I just wanted to say here is, in addition to this whole certification track, one of the key pieces that we really want to work on, or several key pieces here, are, um, you know, areas that we feel need the most work in terms of a collective action. Um, that branding and storytelling, much easier to do in a lot of ways if you're coming together around, common practices, as described in what Kelly described and I described. Cross promotion, product aggregation. We're going to have some webinars in the future, talking about our model, how that might work, for growers. Shared infrastructure, down the road, in terms of economic resilience, trying to grow the market share for regeneratively produced, products, and messaging that in an intense way. Um, Risk mitigation through collaboration, and this could take many forms. On our website, I have noted some of the working groups that we're going to be creating within our collective. And a lot of it is about how to risk mitigate through collective action. That's knowledge sharing. There's some other kinds of pieces there, which we don't have time to get into here, but and reduce cost of certification. If we get enough people in this track, Sun and Earth is going to work with us to reduce the cost of the individual certification for each farm. And it's already, I would say, compared to other certifications in the world, a total deal um, in terms of what it costs per farm. That doesn't include the travel costs, but it's one of the reasons to get Kelly or another inspector here for a couple of weeks to do 15 farms. It really reduces the cost to every grower. Um, and maybe Kelly wants to talk about that,
I
the
just,
pricing.
yeah, I
Yeah,
was just going to mention the current pricing has been, it was a flat fee of $400 plus your inspection expenses. Um, that is heavily subsidized by Dr. Bronner's. So we receive a generous donation that essentially goes toward subsidies for everybody. The actual full price of the certification as it runs would be $2,200. It's not something that's this is why Sun and Earth is around still after 5 years, is because Bronner saw that opportunity and that need to seed something. Because as you know, I don't know how it is in New York specifically, if it's as much of a mess as it is in California in terms of the taxes, fees, and the restrictions to banking and finance. They're taking more than 100% of the pie at this point in some ways. And so to ask for you to pay a high price for a certification just wasn't feasible. So we're really lucky that we have those subsidies. So you can expect a flat fee of $500 going forward past this year. But like Brian said, our board is willing to give you guys a significant discount if you can get a big group together. And again, that will split your travel costs. So just to be fully transparent about what our fees are. There you go. Sorry.
right.
Back to you,
Thank
Brian.
you. All right. And community support. Ultimately, this whole project is about building community. And that's why our initial step here in this info session is just to engage with folks. We're not charging a fee to join or anything like that. It's more about getting involved as a group with us and getting people on this journey. There are other things that will become pieces of this as we grow this. But the initial impulse here is just to build community around this because we think it is very important. Um, the knowledge sharing, especially important. I know growers do it, but we would like to do it in a much more organized way so that the information that is being gathered by growers around the state can be much more accessible and shared. Um, we are going to be creating, structured working groups as people have time to be a part of each one of those, depending on their inclination. Those are described on the website and here. So these are the four areas where we really felt a need to involve whoever's in the collective in exploring decision making around how we view and work with these issues, compliance and education. One of the pieces here, especially the next couple years, is helping people with compliance with New York State regs and education around that. Market access and branding, it's another area of intense work that needs to happen. Sustainability and infrastructure, so that's practices, how we're working with different kinds of practices specific to the issues growers have in the Northeast. And this is something I've been talking with Sun and Earth about. Is adapting some of these ways we're looking at practices to be able to make it work for growers in the Northeast. and then finance, advocacy, and community. Ultimately, for small growers, we're going to have to figure out ways to help people finance and support their operations fiscally. This has been a tremendous struggle in New York. I don't have to tell you guys that, but coming together in a group to figure out strategies around that is really important. Um, Next slide. So another big theme here, which we view as really important, is the inclusion of food production um, into the farm system um, for a number of reasons. One is because we want to see folks growing in polycultures that are much healthier, but we also want to, in a certain way, de-silo cannabis as this separate thing and integrate it, make it more normalized in the agricultural community. One of the ways to do that is integrating it with food production. So one of the things that we are doing in the collective, which kind of takes what Sun and Earth is doing to another level in terms of its specificity, is how farms are working to either grow food to be able to provide to communities in need, or other strategies, if they're not able to do that, to support that endeavor. And that's something that's just going to be a part of the work that a certified collective member will be involved with. Um, and this looks at that cycle. Next slide. Okay, this is some of the contact info there. I want to turn this over to Nicole from New York Small Pharma. Because as I said at the top, Nicole has basically kept New York Small Pharma going for some years now. I was involved very early on before I came to OCM. I was on the board and had to leave to work at OCM. But Nicole was coming on kind of when I left and has kept this venture going. And I wanted to make sure that Nicole um, was able to have a voice in this conversation because we're all working on the same issue. So, Nicole, over to you.
Thank you. And I think we were on the board together for a year, actually. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Kelly and Brian, for having me. And yes, obviously, people know about me and our organization, but just in case anyone on here doesn't, we're a 501c3 and a New York State not-for-profit. We focus on education and advocacy, and we are leveraging cannabis and agriculture to improve society, the environment, and the economic distribution of wealth, at least in the state of New York, or we're trying to at least push the needle on it a little bit. And in the beginning, when I guess definitely when Brian and I were on the board together, we were very focused on legalization. Legalization hadn't happened yet. We were, trying to get regenerative into the law and sustainable issues into the law, climate resiliency into the law. We were really successful in a lot of places. We expanded the definition of distressed farmer. And then after Brian left and I I basically took over the board. We were really then at that point focused on regulations. And then our goal had originally been to ride off into the sunset and teach home grow and never look back. But we saw how New York State was kicking off the program, and we realized that there were more voices that were needed in the implementation side, and we didn't see them doing things that we thought were going to be helpful for regenerative or the small farmer or social and economic equity. So we U-turned back and have been entrenched in the policy game and advocacy game ever since. And as we move forward now, we're really looking to do more education that brings the farmer, educating that sort of a lot of that information that Brian was sharing, like the storytelling, the branding of the farmers to the dispensaries, to the consumers. I think that that's something that's not really being done, and that's something where New York Small Farmer really wants to insert ourselves. Collaboration is something in community that's on the lips of absolutely everybody in New York, but we're not actually seeing it in action. A lot like they're sort of like taking a page from New York State's book where there's a lot of great words in the MRTA and not a lot of action in implementation in terms of at least assisting social economic equity. And we're seeing the same thing within the industry and the community at large, that everyone has the right ideology of wanting to be collaborative and community focused, but we're not really seeing people step up to the plate. So for us, it's really important to identify, to have accountability within the industry, and to sort of identify, who those players are that are doing the right thing. Who are the dispensaries that are really looking to carry the small farmers and work with small farmers so that they can be highlighted within their store? Who are the farmers that are really stepping up to work with one another, to work with their community, and to do it regeneratively and in a way that is considering the environment and the planet. And so, consumer education is extremely important. And, we believe that the economics in the market is what's going to drive this. And it's the consumer education is what's going to drive the economics in the market. So, that's really the role that we want to bring to the space, moving forward, and where we want to focus is being able to help farmers promote and market their goal and their products and their farm. And the other thing that we're really focused on is an economic development program. And originally we were really focused statewide, and then we sort of had a come to Jesus moment and realize that that's a lot to take on. And so we're really focusing in our immediate area, which is the Hudson Valley, building an economic development program in the Hudson Valley. And we see that as creating regional hubs and incubators. Ultimately what we would like to do is establish a guild, which is not actually a collective, in the sense that the individuals that come together in the incubator would maintain their own autonomy. They wouldn't be shared in the decision and the economics of it. They would be independent, but they would come together sort of like an association and setting, their standards of that cohort that comes through the incubator at that time. And, we really want to create a council that is bringing more science towards genetic breeding, towards naming. I was just talking to one of my board members today, and he was saying he wanted to make a shirt that said, "What's wrong with my name?" Because really, until you start looking at some of these, some of this flower genetically, it's not necessarily different. Sorry, my dad's here and he's asking me who I'm talking to. In any event, I don't want to take up a lot of time, but that's just really where we're going. And we really look forward to helping farmers and Sun and Earth and the SunGrowers Collective really promote and market this path towards regenerative and towards creating the cleanest, highest quality product for the consumer, and having like health be the main goal, like what you're providing the consumer as the main goal, and not getting rich or market domination, but really in improving people's lives and contributing something really positive to your community and to your consumers that are buying your product. So short and sweet for me.
Awesome.
And
Thank you.
And we have an event in May, and we'll be going more in depth in this. In May 2nd and 3rd, we're hosting we do an educational forum for the farmers every year, and all the farmers tend to bring their flower with them. So we do a cup every year, and it's a marketing and promotional tool. We give the judges kits to the bud tenders because we really want to use that as a vehicle to introduce the bud tenders to all of these new farms that are coming online. And it's a fun, healthy competition. And we have a lot of people from New York that ask us to open it up to home grow. So we do have a home grow category as well. And I'll wait till the meeting to announce our other little thing.
Awesome.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you. Hey, Brian, I just wanted to also just throw my 2 cents in terms of,
Yes.
I think what you guys are doing out east is really proactive, and just judging by what I've seen out here in the past 4 years, it's been pretty hard. I mean, all of us out here have lost friends, and lots of people moving away, losing their businesses or having to sell their places. And I think you guys can learn a lot from what happened out here. And I think if I would like condense it down into anything, it's get together, don't burn yourself out fighting the regulations, but instead figure out how you can cleverly integrate and co-brand. I think Sun and Earth is of course, I work for them. I love them, but I think it's a great branding tool because we have some of the best growers and genetics in the world in this program. And so when someone cracks open a jar and it has that label on it, it needs to be good. You know, if it's going to really mean something, the practices are important, but Sun and Earth also stands for the medicine and the quality. You know, we don't want to see our cannabis get tobaccoed, right? We want we want this medicine to remain and to be researched and to get to the consumer. So if you want to join a great group, I really think this is a great foundation and really support what Brian and Nicole are doing. So yeah, I would love to see y'all's genetic lineup start to be in our jars as well. So with that, I think Brian, unless you have any closing thoughts, we can open it up for some questions.
Yeah, I would just say, yeah, definitely get in touch. Check out um, websites, email us with further questions. There are links on our website to get involved in the process with a very simple few questions, initial kind of intake form, and then we can start having a conversation about where you are and how you want to do that.
Okay. So yeah,
Question.
thank you. Anybody have any questions or comments that you want to make? We'll do our best.
I have 10 million questions. I just don't
Yeah.
want to take the entire
Oh
time,
yeah.
but I
Oh,
have
go ahead.
so many questions. Um,
What's your
course.
most burning?
of
What's your
course.
most burning?
Okay, so my most burning question, and I'm sorry, I'm at the YMCA, so it's super loud, but I'm on mommy duty right now. So what is the benefit for the farm? What is the farmer getting by joining? So yeah, I know like Sun and Earth certified, but does that mean that they can sell it more expensive, that they get, I don't know, what is it that they get? So that's question number one. Question number two, here in New York, there's not a lot of sun. What's gonna happen to the people that are growing indoors? And I mean, their agriculture in general is not sustainable in general. There's more sustainable ways to do agriculture, but the indoor practice is not gonna go anywhere. It could be more sustainable than many places are doing, but what's gonna happen with them too? Three, regulations. What's gonna happen with the regulations that are actually, in my opinion, and yeah, and perhaps in others' opinion, regulations that actually are taking people to be unsustainable, right? To have non-sustainable practices. So what's going to happen with those regulations? I understand that a 501c3 cannot advocate for changes in regulations, but what are we going to do about that, right? So those are my main three questions, but yeah.
I could speak to a couple of those, Brian, if you.
Go
All
for it.
right.
Daniela's
Just
already heard my
okay.
wrap.
Quickest and easiest question to answer, at least from Sun and Earth's perspective, is what about the indoor growers? This came up last year as it's dramatic. We're out here in the land of sun, so the most people in our program are like absolutely no indoor, right? Sun and Earth cannot issue a Sun and Earth certification to an indoor grower unless they also have an outdoor area, right? So this last year, Sun and Earth did pass a policy allowing for split production, what we call split production, where you have both indoor production and outdoor production on your farm. And what would be required for a split production operation is a commingling plan. So we want to see a definite separation of product. You need to be able to prove it and show us that this is not marketed in the same way. So we'll see how that goes. There's only what I think one in our program that has split or will have split in the future. So for Sun and Earth, that's what's going on with indoor. It's pretty unpopular to allow split production in California. However, I think what you're saying is important in terms of other regions, and it's something that sometimes people out here don't consider. So the benefit for the farmer, what's the benefit for becoming certified, or what is the benefit for joining the collective? Just make sure I understand your question.
Well, both. Because if I understand and if I understood what you said in your part of the presentation, without the funding that you're getting from Bronner, Dr. Bronner, is that correct?
Mhm.
This would not be sustainable. So you could not be able to do this. So then what is the benefit to join? What is the benefit of if this is a non-sustainable, let's call it business, right? So then what is the goal, right? And what is the goal for the farmer, right? If the farmer is going to join and pay $400, what are they getting? Like, okay,
Right.
I'm certified, and then, you know, I go to whatever the Kroger's and get my oranges or what that said organic, and then I'm paying more money for that organic certification. So what is it that the farmer is getting, and what is it that the entire collective is getting if it's not? And I mean, I know that I ask questions like I'm very, but I don't
No,
mean
that's a
to,
great question.
but
Absolutely. That's
but
the
if it's not,
question, really, you know, right?
yeah, if it's not a sustainable entity and needs for this person to give the funding, then where is it going in general?
So I think there's a couple of pieces to the question, and I think it's an excellent question in terms of what does the farmer get for their $400? So I think there's like the concrete, which is you get the service of certification in this learning process, and this additional documentation that will help transition you into the National Organic Program, should that ever come. You also get marketing tools, essentially support, co-branding, access to, and promotion on our website. We provide assets and optics to every certified grower, in like a zip file that you get, along with guidance on how to use those things. So that's just the concrete about what you get for the money. And in terms of this issue has come up also, people have pointed out, especially in Humboldt, oh, well, why should we support Sun and Earth if they can't even pay their own bills? Essentially you're reliant on a main funder, and isn't that, kind of dangerous to buy in, because what if they remove their funding and then everything's just gone, right? So this is not, you're not the first person to point that out. It's something that I think about every single day. In fact, my first year in working for Sun and Earth, I got us $50,000 from the county grant to subsidize the certification to zero. So we brought on 26 new farms. And the way I think about this is Bronner's is not perpetually intending to fund Sun and Earth forever. I think the idea is that this is a chicken and egg kind of situation where, hey, what am I getting for that amount of money if I can't sell my product for more? That doesn't make sense, right? So the subsidy is intended to kind of give us some cushion as we build the brand awareness and allow for the quality of the product to start speaking, and for the retail market to mature. And all of these, from just working over 5 years, I've seen people go, I have no idea what that is, to going in and seeing a shelf full of Sun and Earth product, like just at my dispensary down the street. So that's something I've actually seen in real time happen with the program. So I guess what I will say to that is there are a lot of people working really hard to make it work. And I think what we are hoping for is that in the end, the certification cost will continue to be subsidized, not just by one funder, though. We've also sought out all kinds of grants and programs. And one thing that's really great for grant writing is this data that we've been collecting, and what we are, the ultimate goal of the practices and the impact on the environment. Because as you know, the reputation of cannabis, at least in California, pretty dirty. And people that are not involved in the industry, they hear cannabis and they think, oh, you're destroying our watersheds. And you're like, hold on, wait, and so I think the benefit is co-branding and marketing in a real sense, a long-term co-branding method that really focuses on people that hold the best genetics in the industry. Just plain and simple, it has to do with genetics. And also you have this long-term goal of additional opportunities that the proving your practices are, quote, sustainable, which is a really hard word, but regenerative, or at least doing no harm, that this opens up the opportunity for other people to want to work with you in terms of big money, whether it be private foundations, whether it be grant programs. I think we've received over $450,000 through the CDFW grant program out here in California. Because that's such a big market, we were able to put some manpower behind that. So I think that I think that's a helpful, maybe Brian may want to add to this, because he has more knowledge about what you guys are, where you are at in your industry out in New York. But I think that's overall what we're dealing with, is it's like, we also need your help still, at this level where we're at in terms of certification, just like the National Organic Program had to build. I mean, Brian, you know.
Exactly. And it really is about seeding. New York's marketplace is in its infancy in so many ways. And I believe that, when you're asking what they're getting for it, I mean, Kelly pretty much described it, but what we have to understand is, in this marketplace, the differentiation is already starting to happen. When you differentiate your product in a transparent, certified way against corporate, mass-produced product, and you know, other kinds of sketchy product that is either inverted, and yeah, I mean, there's a whole huge discussion around that, but it's in carving out the niche, which I think could be larger in New York than it is in California, for what we're proposing. Um, and then there's a whole nother issue around, and Daniela and I have talked about this. Yes, it's the Northeast. One of the things that we're doing as a collective is developing and trialing some of these things that need to happen in the Northeast, to develop regenerative models, but are going to be very different than West Coast, in terms of what is required. Um, I don't know, in terms of the indoor outdoor piece, that's a whole nother issue here, and the certification of farms that do both of those things. Actually don't have that here. The only one that's certified is a farm I did in Vermont.
Oh, it's Vermont. Yeah.
That and in Vermont, you can grow outside and indoor, and have that option. We really need to push for that here, for micros who want to do that, and have both of those options. But the bigger piece, is ultimately down the road, is indoor models, because they're so intensive, are in the end, because as the agricultural piece of this develops, like other agriculture, the cost of production is not going to be sustainable for indoor, um, in my
Yeah.
opinion. It's just the ROI for investors is not going to be there. It's really important to have lots of small growers who have very low input costs in a developed kind of system, who are cooperating with each other in terms of supply chain, guaranteeing that to dispensaries in a cohesive kind of way through an organization. That's really important, because it's one of the issues that small growers always deal with, no matter what they're growing, is how to consolidate that and work with the buyers in a way that keeps it consistent, keeps the dispensary owners happy, because they're constantly getting really high quality product. So that's what you get with this. It's something that exists in lots of other kinds of agriculture, but doesn't here. And as I say, we're in our infancy, and this is a piece to kind of take us to that next level.
I will
But
point out. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to point out that in California we have the CDFA published a rule on a comparable to organic program. So there is a organic mark or comparable to organic certification mark that can be issued in California. CCOF and EnviroCan both issue those certifications. And there is nothing that would prohibit an indoor grower from achieving that certification if they are abiding by those standards. It's hard, but they can do it. So anyways, just looking forward to federally, I don't, even though Sun and Earth is a regenerative outdoor standard, there are benefits to, proving you're organic, even if you're, just going through that process and then looking forward. But I think the other thing I wanted to mention that I forgot to mention in terms of what Sun and Earth does for retail optics is we have a program launched this year called our, what is it? I'm probably going to botch it. I'm the operations lady, not the marketing lady. Essentially, it's an organic section where we're providing assets to a limited number of dispensaries that are interested, where essentially they pledge a certain amount of shelf space for either OCal, Sun and Earth certified. I believe they include Dragonfly Earth Medicine Pure, which is another very groovy kind of seat of your pants certification. A lot of cool, amazing growers in that program they're too hippie even for a third party certification, So, but if they pledge to buy those products to put on the shelves, then we give them all these free assets, great little display and all of that. So that's just one extra little thing that they've launched this year, just in terms of assets. Sorry.
And I would say, one of the things we're doing is, and we're going to be working together as a group to really co-promote, co-brand. So potentially on a jar, if you're a member of each one of these organizations, you're going to be able to be supported and have that as messaging for your brand. And so all of these things can come together and work in a synergistic way.
Hey, everybody. I'm Sohiko. I haven't introduced myself. Daniela, how are you? I work with Brian. We've been conspiring for quite a long time, and so I'm kind of in the background. And I think we should have a, a much more in-depth conversation around the economic model of the collective. But I just want to sort of emphasize something that Brian did say. And ultimately, I envision the certification, the Sun and Earth is embedded into what the collective is offering. And so it's one piece, right? It's a brand that goes across growers and it communicates to the consumer, to the public, a set of standards, a set of principles, a set of values. I think what the collective, at least part of the way that I envision what that will be doing is providing that as the foundation of brand marketing, as essentially 4 pillars of what the collective is offering. So the brand marketing and sales, essentially, and then a lot of the administrative SG&A and compliance, right? That Brian has talked about, which has a lot to do with inventory management, right? It also has to do with the specifications and the communication and that connection to the processor. And so what Brian mentioned is that what we're doing, we want to take a lot of things that have been done in agriculture quite a bit. So we're sort of recapitulating what some other operators have done. And to my mind, as long as the cultivation is done in the right way, the way we're describing it, and the standards that we're putting out, then what the collective does is then aggregates those efforts, right? Essentially aggregates it and creates the pipes, if you will, to get it to the processors, to get it packaged, to get it processed, to get into the consumer's hands, and then really puts a lot of effort into the brand marketing and sales piece of it. So that brand marketing, the administrative and coordination, the knowledge sharing and education, right? And then really all of the leverage and collective bargaining that comes along with that. So it's one element. I don't think that it's a set it and forget it. Ultimately, and again, we'll talk about the business model of the collective. But ultimately, if the revenue streams come from brokering, right, and providing a lot of these services, a lot of these SG&A type services to the growers at a high value, ultimately, right, for because of the economies of scale, then there's already a value add there. But then all of these things sort of lift themselves, and then the economic model supports the certification. But the certification has its independence so that it's real. It's not just fabricated greenwashing, right? It's a true third party certification, and we just facilitate it to the group.
And
But again, we should have a follow up on on the economic model of the collective piece of it.
I think I love what he just said because it kind of filled in the blanks for me. Like you said, we do certification. That's what Sun and Earth does. I wear a lot of hats, but at the end of the day, it's certifying farms and making sure if I get audited, I can prove everything that I've done. But what we see is this need for people to work together. So I'm going to just give you a concrete example of a hash maker I met that really wants to source from Sun and Earth farms, or at least baseline farms, organic farms. And the problem that they're coming out with is that, like, this person claims there's only 10 great strains that wash well to make ice water hash and the associated products that they're doing. And they can't get the farmers to freaking get together and grow these strains. So I can just see this is one application where an organization that's not the Senator, I can't I'm not going to go out and pull our farms to see what strains they're growing. But this is a useful role for a group to discuss, say, hey, how do we increase the supply chain for manufactured products? Because as you know, cannabis is perishable. And if you're an outdoor grower, then guess what? You have a limited amount, and you have a limited window to sell that product. So how do we get together and aggregate into something that makes sense? And here's a supplier, and here's the strain we're looking for, and here's a list of nurseries that can give it to us, or et cetera. So I just think that that's really, I thought what he said it really like kind of clicked for me in ways that this is a great idea. So good job, Brian.
It's all everybody has contributed to this.
Are there any other questions? And Daniela, thank you so much. She had to pop off. I just got a message.
Yep.
Any other questions we can get to while we have a little bit of time left?
No, I mean, I've talked to Brian extensively about this, and he knows a few of my concerns around the regulations. I think the regulations in New York there needs to be an evolution to allow a lot of these things that we're talking about happening. So that like you talked, about reserving shelf space and things like that, things like that would have to be evolved to allow those type of things to happen in New York. But the way to make it happen would be to push those boundaries, right? Because we're not working within a box, we're building a box in New York. I applaud the confluence of different organizations into this. And I think not looking at what the differences between each of those organizations are working for, but recognizing that we are working towards one goal of normalizing cannabis, of taking regenerative practices and bringing them to the forefront for several different reasons is important, and accepting where each organization is at, and what we're able to and what we're willing to give, and not being reductive towards each other, I think is extremely important. I applaud that effort, and I think that is something that we all need to keep in mind as we move forward. But that my biggest concern as a licensed micro business in New York is just that having to push the limits of the regulations, and not knowing where I can land within an organization yet. And I think that's something that needs to be talked about in the community so people can become comfortable with that idea of, there's vertical integration limitations within these licensed tiers, and how are we going to get around them, and how are we going to work to evolve them so that we can get to this common goal to put cannabis and food production where we all know it should be. So I just kind of wanted to say that Brian knows where I'm coming from with that. I've talked to him about that, and I appreciate y'all doing this, and I appreciate y'all kind of letting me sit in and be a part of it. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for being here. We are going to do another webinar. We'll let you know. It'll be coming up at some point in May to describe the business model and address your concerns around that, which we think we have done with the model that we have. So that's coming up, and we'll let you know about that.
Excellent. And if there's any way I can add value, certainly let me know. And as many people have stated, this is the Northeast, and indoor production not only should be a part of it, but has to be a part of regenerative certifications in order to make sure that indoor production is lowering its negative footprint on our planet as we're using it, because whether it's included or not, it's going to happen in the Northeast. And, if we don't make it the norm that regenerative practices are incorporated, then it's going to go the other way, right? But if everybody is using photovoltaics, then the cost of photovoltaics comes down, this type of things, so if the market pushes that way, um, we can enact real change on that side too. So indoor is a huge part of the Northeast. I know it's not part of Sun and Earth, but it should be definitely a huge, huge, huge consideration as we talk about cultivating in the Northeast.
Agreed. Yeah, for sure.
And I just want to just say one more thing to the group too, just from the land of California, the land of a really devastated market, is just to conserve your energy, to work together, and to, if I hear, it is regulation. Like I see it all the time out here. Like there is stupid, stupid regulations that are inhibiting best practices, not promoting them. And but there's also a million other issues like finance, lack of access to banking, and ridiculous. I mean, it gets so into the minutia, as you guys know, that it's like, how do you fight this giant on all directions, right? So I guess what I would recommend, if anything, is to find a group, right? And not try to tackle every single regulation that's hurting you, because it's going to be slower than you want. That's like, people have been fighting the good fight out here for a long time, and the change is just painstakingly slow. And it is hard to show up to a farm where someone's business partner was there last year and they're in the ground this year because of economic devastation. And so I just, play that long game, work together, and don't burn yourself out trying to do it all yourself. Like really focus on one issue, get great data, and make the change where you can. But it's got to be a collaborative effort across the board, and just, stay positive, stay frugal, be very careful with your money, like careful, slow, long game. We're in like a 50-year game here, and people don't want to hear that, but it's true. So, thank you guys all. Anything else? And Brian, you want to close this out here if there's no other questions?
Well, thank you, Kelly. Thanks, Nicole. Thank you, Suhiko, Philippe, Tom, and James for hanging in here. We went over our time, but that's fine. This was recorded. We will post this all over the place so people can hear this. I think it was great. Thanks for the questions. And stay tuned for webinars we'll have coming up. There's also another Sun and Earth one on May 6th, and we'll be involved in that as well. Yeah, and just reach out.
Yeah, feel free to reach out, get your application, whatever you need. I'm here, and I'll get this uploaded as soon as I can figure out how to do that.
All right.
And now I'm gonna go plant potatoes.
Very good. Enjoy the day out there.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thanks, everybody.